Over the past week or so, we've had a number of very wonderful things that have happened for us at New Hope. And of course, among them was a celebration of last Sunday morning. If you decided to sleep in on Christmas morning and not be at New Hope, my goodness, what an event that was. From the appearance of the wise angel shepherds to all the video work, it was quite a Christmas celebration here, wasn't it? However, it was unbelievable. However, I have noticed in just looking around this morning that I think a few of our heartier New Year's Eve folks are a little under the weather this morning, or something's here going on. But be that as it may, we're off to a great start, and I'm really glad you're here this morning. If you want to know, or if you're going to be here, or if you're just traveling through today, or this is where you live, or you're just down for a few months of the year, if you're going to be around us, and you ought to know what exactly it is we're doing. Any congregation ought to be able to say it with great clarity. So not only this morning, but over the next few weeks, we're going to really emphasize the practical nature of who we are as a group of people, and what difference it really makes in our congregational life. But additionally, we'll be looking at how it applies to our personal lives. This is our simple strategy statement. This is how we really operate and how we exist. And we encourage people that it's also very appropriate for their individual lives, for their family life, to work under such a carefully laid out principle. Here it is. Maybe you know it. Maybe you've heard it so many times, or maybe it's the first time. New Hope Christian Church exists to give God glory by bringing people to Christ, by building them up in the faith, and if you notice the word faith there has a capital for a specific set of reasons we'll get into over the weeks, and encouraging them to serve. So you've already heard it twice this morning. On the document in which we use as a primary enrollment tool for the congregation, opening up the doors to any level of involvement in the congregation will be emphasized beginning next Sunday morning. And you saw the video about serving this morning. There's so many ways to serve. We'll do that in a small way next week, but then the third week of the new month, we'll really build that up. We'll really work on then in that next week the content of the faith. What does the faith really have to say? But those things aside, this morning, bringing people to Christ. I mean, if we do anything, if we do nothing else, that is the primary emphasis. So we wanted you to know that if you're going to be here, and if you're really wanting to really struggle with what is a congregation about, what is any church to be about? We believe it dominantly is to bring people to Christ. That is its function. So in all the background of this morning, you see that little piece up at the very top of the screen there? The theme is always going to be giving God glory this morning by bringing people to Christ. That is our function. And if you say, well, who is this addressed to? Here's at least 4 categories of people to whom this message is addressed. And we break them down this way. It's to all searching people. Searching people. Some churches used to structure themselves and call themselves seeker churches. Are you familiar with that terminology? Some of you have been around churches a few days. You heard that. Yes, we're a seeker church. I never quite figured out what that meant. However, searching people, I have that all figured out, because I've always been one of those searching people for a particular application. So if it doesn't make sense in your mind, maybe you need to resupply a word. But in my mind, searching people are folks who are looking for a spiritual connection to all Christ followers. So often, I find that church people over the years become disconnected, almost disenfranchised. Have you ever had wonderful, solid spiritual experiences in a local congregation? I hope some of you will say yes. Because when I ask the next question, have you ever had a less than satisfactory, somewhat, could I use the word rotten even on the first day of the year? There'll be more of us that will say yes, as a matter of fact. So when we're talking about this whole structure of the church, and we're talking about what we emphasize, it is to searching people who are looking for a spiritual connection, and we'll offer that through Christ. But it's also for people who are already Christ followers to say, this is what we're about, this is what we're doing here. We believe that the emphasis makes sense not only at a corporate level or at an organizational level. Is it okay to use the word corporate level on a Sunday morning? But I just mean all of us together. That's really, it's not, I don't mean it to be a stuffy word at all. But to all Christ followers. We also mean it to be to all congregations. I mean, I just read the paper this morning about a new congregation coming into the area of East Manatee County. By the way, if you want to know about us, when we first started, the church planting churches that hired me said, here's $15,000 you can start with. we were a bit underfunded. I just read about in the paper this morning about a new congregation that's being started out of a branch from Texas. They're starting with an $11 million plant. Yeah, I mean, this is not $11 million right here, okay? So, I mean, is it entirely different? But look, friends, I don't care how big it is. The monopoly board is still the monopoly board, right? Whatever churches are doing, because sometimes the smaller churches criticize the larger churches. Oh, they're just about the numbers. And sometimes the larger churches criticize the smaller churches. Well, they just don't know what they're doing. Friends, that's not the test. Jesus never says the size of your congregation is the test of your faithfulness. It's to all congregations. Whatever their size, whatever their location, they ought to be about bringing people to Christ. If they're not bringing people to Christ, what are they doing? I don't know, maybe they're just running a great circus or a small celebration. But He is the emphasis. It's not we ourselves, never to be the emphasis. And finally, we do think it makes sense at this level. This is to all individuals and families. So if you come and it's the start of the new year and you're trying to find some direction for yourself personally or for the scope of your family, we invite you to come to Christ. I mean, you've tried everything else. Try Christ. He is the Lord of all, the King of the universe, the appointed Son of God who has come and directed us. And particularly, we'll be emphasizing these messages in the context of brokenness. I have a very good friend who has a dominant leadership position in society, and she says this, Andy, we're all broken. I didn't quite understand that when she first said it, but the more I've reflected on it, I finally have internalized it and said, yes, at some point in our lives. So I don't know where the new year finds you. For the past 6 weeks, I've been entertaining the walk-in clinic folks. It's like, so if you ask me, do you feel whole and healthy this morning to start the new year, Andy? No, I'm pretty much into drugs right now, if you want to know the truth. Some more prednisone, some more antibiotics. Oh, thankfully. And anything to make me stop coughing. So I do mean that brokenness at a physical level, but I also mean it at a spiritual level. A level at which you say, I just can't take much more. You ever been there? I just can't take much more. I just can't take much more financial collapse in society. I just can't take much more chaos in my family. I can't take much more, if you're an adolescent, picking on me because of the way I look. I mean, you know how cruel human adolescence is and how cruel children can be. So we're going to always couch these terms in this throughout this year to people who are struggling with brokenness. Because regardless of my degree of health, that'll hopefully return to me in 10 days or so, somebody else will be suffering physically, you see. Somebody else will be struggling with whatever the bug is, and it could be far beyond the mere common cold. We know it can be very profound. So in that level then, whatever the circumstances, whatever the abuse you've struggled with in days past, whatever poor choices you've personally made, whatever financial concerns you have, we'll be looking at those, but always in the context. You remember the top of the screen? Always with the emphasis on bringing people to Christ, because He is truly what we're searching to, He is who we are searching to reveal. So to all searching people, if you have come to this first day of the new year and you found yourself broken in the family, and let's just stop there for a minute, because so many of the breaks in our lives happen because of our unhealthy families. I just want to be candid about that and say it includes my family. I've both been the perpetrator as well as the sufferer of brokenness in family. That's why I tell you, the Bible is so believable. Because rather than giving us all these, what if the Bible just was this record of 50,000 perfect families? Wouldn't you want to just I shouldn't say throw up. Wouldn't you just want to regurgitate? What if all the women just looked like Betty Crocker? I know I just told you how old I was, okay? What if they all looked like Betty Crocker? What if they all looked, what was the guy's name on the Leave It to Beaver show? What was his name? Ward. What if all the men looked like Ward, right? And all of the ladies were like June Cleaver, who in her pearls and full-skirted crinolines was already up mopping the floor at 7:30 in the morning. Oh my goodness. Now kids, I don't know who the perfect married people would be in your day. No, it's not Homer Simpson. But regardless of what you would think, the Bible is filled with these stories of these broken families. So no matter the degree of spiritual sadness that you find yourself in this morning, the struggle can be addressed in Christ. And you say, Andy, you sound pretty certain about that. Could you give me some examples? Sure. The story of Noah, we usually tell it at the kids' level, which is the story of the great ark, and the animals went in 2 by 2. Have you read the story of Noah truly in the Bible? It's also a story of drunkenness. Have you read the story of Abraham? He's the father of all who would be called Hebrews. He is the first man in the history of the world to be called a Hebrew. He will be the father of many nations. Abraham is a liar and a coward. In his family, oh, it does affect his family. Well, Moses must have been really swell then. No, Moses too was a coward. Moses too ran from God. But by the way, as I get older, I continue to be more encouraged about the story of Moses. Because when Moses was 40, God was still working with him. When Moses was turned 80, all of you who believe in retirement, when Moses turned 80, God said, I think you're just about ready to go to work for me. Think about that. No kidding, he did. But Moses' problems are legend. You pick up that Old Testament text of Exodus and read that story of Moses. He has more problems, let's see, than another stretch too long ago than we used to say, then Carter has liver pills. How about that? Jacob, who will become Israel, as a liar. Rahab, scandalous past. You might think, scandalous past? But Andy, my family has a sexually scandalous past. Look, it's Sunday morning in the church house. I just want to be clear. Rahab was a prostitute. And yet, do you know where she finds herself? In the history and lineage of Jesus the Christ. God chose her. The Bible's not messing around when it says, to all broken people. Not just little brokenness. I mean, profoundly broken, searching people. Esther. Oh, Esther. Well, that's a swell story about Purim. And they spin this little dreidel, and it's all this nice little celebration, right? Well, it's good until you read the Bible. See, reading the Bible changes a lot of things. It'll really clue you in. Esther, who's one of the most powerful women in the history of the world, used by God again and again, was a member of a harem. So, excuse me? It's in the church house? You said something else sexual this morning, Andy? You read the Bible. To broken people, God reaches out and calls us. And then, of course, David, he's a swell guy. He writes all these psalms and all these things. But you know some of David's story, I think, and I don't want to do it again lest you think I'm just reading that again and again. In October 2011, the Associated Press ran what I consider to be a profoundly moving story out of the nation of India, actually out of the city of Mumbai. At birth, they were having 285 girls had been named Nakusha. Pardon me, I'm not a Hindi speaker, so I'm going to work with these words. So I'm not sure that I have the emphasis on the correct syllable. Right? They named these girls Nakusa or Nakushi, which means unwanted. 285 of these girls participated in October of 2000, just last year, in a renaming ceremony, because the name unwanted is often given to baby girls in this area as a result of not wanting girls as children. Many of them are aborted. But this renaming ceremony was an attempt to give these girls a new identity. Some of the girls, as they lined up to receive their new certificates, chose names like this: Purpose. They wouldn't call her Purpose, but it'd be a translation or a meaning of what her name would mean to us in English, or Beautiful, or Good, or like this one. One girl chose a name that in meaning would mean very tough. You like that? I like in there like that. One girl who had been named Nakusa by her grandfather, who was disappointed in her birth, said, "Now in school my classmates and friends will be calling me by this new name, and that makes me very happy." And that can be found at an Associated Press website dated 10/22/11. The actual name of the article was 285 Indian Girls Shed Unwanted Names. Friends, this is what we believe. Regardless of your family of origin, regardless of what they've done to you or said about you, regardless of your background and where you've come from, God is ready to give you a new name. And how does he do that? Through Christ. So you come to Christ, and all things can be made new. What do you mean, all things? I mean all things. Including the disastrous things that sometimes happen to us and our families. And our families are not always strong, we just have to admit it. And if you're looking for a place, and consider yourself among the broken of the world, please know this, that in coming to a group of people like New Hope, you can find a place to be restored in wholeness. Not by us. I wish we had that kind of strength. I wish we had that kind of therapy strategy. We are really good. We support one another. We do great things together. Would you believe there were 5,000 children camping here over the last 2 nights? Oh, that's what the adults said, there were 5,000. Maybe there weren't 5,000. Maybe it just seemed like 5,000. They've been camping here on the grounds for 2 nights. That's why some of the adults look a little weary, and even the kids are starting to fade right on out. You see, by that cooperation of these broken people who come together and who shed the things of their past because of Christ's power in their lives, then truly, friends, then truly we find a new name. And the new name is given to us by Christ. So to all searching, to all broken people who are searching, and to all Christ followers especially, perhaps you can be thinking to yourself, saying, well, you know, that sounds really good, Andy, but you don't know the struggles of my life. I mean, maybe I should be so lucky that that would actually happen. I mean, how many times have you changed churches in your lives, right? How many times have you gone looking for a congregation to find an association and to be built up with? I mean, it's a challenging, it's an honorable search, but it's a difficult church. Philip Griffin writes about a dog. I love this. This is great. He writes about this dog, and he says, I saw this sign once. There was a big cash reward for this lost dog. And the description of the dog, he said, just got it all. He said, this dog, he said, it had a picture of the dog. He said, my dog only has 3 legs. He's blind in the left eye. You'll get this. You'll get this. You'll guess it. I know you will. He's only got 3 legs. He's blind in the left eye. He's missing a right ear. His tail has been broken off, and he was accidentally neutered by a fence. And the answers to the name, you got it. What's lucky about Lucky is that he has an owner that still wants him, right? No matter how you've been maimed and beat up by life, Almighty God still wants you. And that's not luck, that's blessing through Jesus Christ. So to all the broken, to all the searching people, to all the Christ followers, to all congregations, look, the emphasis is here, we're searching for a pattern for congregations as well. We're trying to put it all together, and I quickly move on to the next one, and to all individuals and families. Let's put those 4 together and find ourselves somewhere in the middle of it. There's a model of spirituality here, this seeking of Christ, this finding of Christ, and applying His truths to our daily lives. The emphasis coming later this month will be on what we call emotional, healthy spirituality. Perhaps you've seen some of the little flicks run by in the early announcements as you come in the door. Emotionally healthy spirituality will be a church-wide initiative, and it'll be themes that I'll be speaking on Sunday morning. There'll be small group opportunities, 3 different ones, one on Tuesday night, one on Friday night, and one on Sunday morning. You can join a small group of people, have conversations about it. The 2 midweek or Tuesday and Friday night meetings will be here in the fellowship hall. The one on Sunday morning will be down in Hope House, and we'll be inviting you to develop those relationships that will truly build up our understanding. But I just give you one clear warning and caution about the people who are here at New Hope this morning as well as the people who will be parts of those groups. And I used for this insight the writings of NPR commentator Heather King, who identifies herself openly in public as a recovering alcoholic who has come to reflect on her faith in Christ. And she says that she also was reflecting on her first experience with church. She's never been there before. So this was her reflection. I thought this was just very insightful. She said, my first impulse was to think, my God, I don't want to, I wouldn't say that, but I'm just telling you what she said. My God, I don't want to get sober with these nutcases. She said, I wanted spirituality, but I didn't want it with all these other messed up people. The humiliation of discovering that we're thrown in with this group of people who don't get it, extremely unpromising people. Catch this. People who are broken, misguided, wishy-washy, and out for themselves. To which I say, we have room for one more. Right? Because it's not about us. I mean, I have great friends in church. Friends I've known for decades and decades of my life. And they encourage me to a level I can hardly express with words. But ultimately, I'm not in church about them. And I pray they are not in church about me. We're only in church because Christ has come and blessed us. And therefore, in our outreach, it's always about reaching out to people, not bringing them to ourselves, but bringing them to Christ. Quickly then, I'd ask you, can we identify in the Bible the authority who directs us to bring people to Christ? I mean, is there a part of the Bible that really says it that way? That we're not just making this strategy up, that it really is inherent to the Bible's teaching. And again, the words to bring are underlined because that's part of the whole theme of our congregation. We exist to give God glory by bringing people to Christ. And yes, here's one key central passage about that. It's found in Matthew's Gospel in chapter 3 and verse 17. And Matthew writes about the designated one. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." We believe that Christ is the designated one. I mean, we study other writers, we study other speakers, but again and again in the Bible, I want to come back to the truth that it is He who is Christ. One way of expressing it is to say that heaven's voice is earth's truth. He is the one that we apply ourselves to. Excuse me while I slip one of these back into my mouth. I'm fading out here. Somebody asked me, how are you going to get through a sermon this morning, Andy? And I said, briefly. I'm doing my best. If you'd listen faster, it would help. So this morning, a few expanding insights, but over the next few weeks, additional expanding insights about the extent and reign of Christ throughout the year. So let's apply it directly. Let me ask you about the financial stability of your world. How's it doing? Are you happy with the economy? All those who said yes? All those who said no. A few yeses, a few hopefuls. Here's the Christian strategy on financial stability. Again, once you've come to Christ, it makes sense to seek to apply the truths. Here's what Christians are. We believe God owns all. Not almost all, not 99%, but all. That's why Christians are stewards of the earth. That's why we were the first people to be green. We said, what do you mean you're green? Of course God is the creator. And of course we're responsible for all the earth. We believe that God entrusts His possessions to us and we are called stewards. It's a very carefully chosen word. Jesus chose it in expressing the relationship to us. We believe that we are completely accountable to God and to one another for our financial resources. That means how I spend any dollars at all. Some people won't like this, but I decided I'm just going to mess with it this morning anyway. Look, we seek to practice extreme financial accountability in our congregation. And the reason we do so is part of it based in our history. I won't go into that this morning, but it has to do with the church plants that started before we did. And it has to do with our emphasis on it. But we also believe that we are accountable to one another for the way we spend what we usually call our personal resources. Our personal resources. That is, in some way, at some level, I'm accountable to you for how my family spends funding. Wait a minute, where'd that come from? Well, I think you already agreed with me. We're all in this together. if we're all in this together, then here's the phraseology that I've always used with my children, and I use with you as my friends. If the money doesn't make sense, nothing makes sense. You see, Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. We calculated the amount of money needed to meet the financial goals of the congregation for the year. We added it all up. We divided it all up by 52. And then we put the 2012 financial plan together. You'll see the report this morning in the back of the news bulletin about how we did in December. The good news is we did not exceed the expenses we thought we would have in December. Yay! The frustrating news is the number for tithes and offerings that came in was less than that. Ooh, all right. Look, I don't know any other place to go than to tell you it's a struggle to be a congregation. Is it a struggle financially at your home? Is it a challenge? Well, it's a struggle for us as a congregation as well. I mean, we have real concerns and real opportunities, but it just has to make sense about how it all comes together. Here's a key passage from the Word of God. If you don't know this one, this was found in Matthew's Gospel in chapter 13, and it says it this way: the kingdom of heaven, then, this relationship with having been brought to Christ, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and he bought it. That means that this great pearl, that this relationship with Christ is precious, that it has value, and that it's life-changing. Terry has warned me, finding Christ is worth everything. Everything. He changes all things in life. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. Friends, New Hope Christian Church exists to give God glory. By bringing people to Christ, building them up in the faith, and encouraging them to serve. Over the years of our lives together, we're going to stay true to bringing people to Christ. Again and again, whatever happens, wherever it goes. All that we find, we are like young children at a baseball game. This really happened out in Kansas City. A baseball was hit into the stands to a little boy, and it didn't quite get there. Of course, it was a foul ball. An usher grabbed the ball and gave it to the young boy, and he was elated. But down below him, about 4 rows, another little boy was crying his eyes out because he thought the ball should have been his. Believe it or not, it really happened on national television. Diamondbacks announcer Mark Grace was calling the game. He was speaking with another announcer named Sutton, and this is what happened. The boy who had been given the ball by the usher stood up when he saw the little boy crying and ran down the stairs and gave the little boy the ball. Sutton, who was watching, you know how the cameras pan in these games down to one little focal point? They caught it. Sutton says to Grace, "Are you kidding me? This kid is going to do this? This is big time, right there. I can't believe I just witnessed that. That is awesome." Sutton, young man, you are a star. Friends, I don't know whether you this morning are the little boy who just had the ball tossed to him by the usher 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, 50, I don't know how many you've like me to add. And you've been holding that ball. But somewhere down below you is some crushed and broken person who's ready to receive the gift that you have. God calls upon you as stewards of life, as stewards of financial resources and generosity and faith, to find broken people and to help them be brought to Christ. Not to a nice church building, not even to big campouts and donuts on Sunday morning and barbecue on Saturday at noon for New Year's Eve. I like all those things. But to Christ. That is our charge. Friends, if you've come this morning and you're searching for that relationship with Christ, we've tried to make it very clear. He is the one who holds us together. If you want to pray with someone before you go this morning about finding that special relationship with Christ, if you want to pray about making that first-time public decision, I'd be glad to share that time of prayer with you. If I missed you this morning, please follow up with me in the week. All my contact information is on the bottom of the news bulletin that you can receive as you go out the door this morning. If you want to pray about something else special in your life, stop and let's pray together this morning. I'm not the only person that will stop here and pray. Other people will stop as well. So we stand at the close of worship together and turn the house lights on. Unless the person next to you is as sick as I am, and if they do, they offer you their elbow. Hold their elbow, and we'll pray together. Happy New Year, friends. Let's bring people to Christ. Father, thank you so much for the morning. Thank you for the challenge of being stewards of the resources that you have entrusted to us as we lift up Christ in this generation and in this new year especially. Bless our families. Bless those that are broken and are struggling and looking for that connection. May they find Christ in this new year. And if you can use us, if you need to motivate us and direct us, O Lord, please but speak in the calm voice of an old jeweler and tell us that you have need of us again, and your people will be ready to respond. And all God's people prayed together and said, Amen. Have a blessed new year, friends.